The courtroom was so quiet you could hear my heart breaking. I sat in that wooden chair, my 72-year-old hands shaking in my lap, watching my daughter Shanice walk in like she owned the place. She had a lawyer beside her, some sharp-dressed man with a briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly pension. But what hurt the most was the smile on her face. That cold, calculated smile that said she thought she'd already won. "Your Honor," her lawyer began, spreading papers across the table like he was dealing cards. "My client has come to reclaim her parental rights and assume financial guardianship of her son, Isaiah Hayes, who recently came into considerable wealth." Considerable wealth. That's what they called it. Like my baby's genius was just a lottery ticket she'd forgotten to cash in. Isaiah sat next to me, 16 years old and calm as Sunday morning. His hand found mine under the table and squeezed. 3 short squeezes. Our code. It meant, "I got you, Grandma." But I didn't see how anyone could have me now, not with those forged papers Shanice's lawyer was waving around. Papers that claimed she'd been in Isaiah's life all along. Papers that lied about everything. The judge looked at me over her glasses. "Mrs. Hayes, do you have legal representation?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. All I could think about was that night 11 years ago, when everything changed. Before we continue, shout out to Keisha from Detroit. We appreciate the love you show by commenting and sharing. It was a Tuesday in March when my doorbell rang at 9 o'clock at night. I remember because I'd just finished grading papers from my 5th grade class. I'd been a teacher for 38 years before I retired, and I still tutored kids from the neighborhood 3 days a week. Teaching was in my blood. When I opened that door, Shanice was standing there with a little boy I barely recognized. My grandson. I'd only seen him twice since he was born, both times when Shanice needed money. She'd kept him away from me, said I was too old-fashioned to understand her life. "He's yours now," she said, pushing past me with 2 garbage bags that held all of Isaiah's belongings. The boy stood there in the doorway, humming to himself, not looking at anything in particular. "What do you mean he's mine?" I grabbed her arm. "Shanice, what are you talking about?" "I can't do it anymore, Mama. He's too much, too difficult, too weird. I got a new job in California and I need to focus on my career." "You're retired. You got time. He's your son, and you're his grandmother. That's what grandmothers do, right? Step in?" She pulled her arm free and headed back to the door. "I'll send money when I can." That was a lie. She never sent a dime. "Shanice!" I called after her, but she was already in her car. I watched those taillights disappear down my street, and then I looked at this little boy standing in my living room, humming the same 3 notes over and over, his eyes focused on the pattern in my carpet. Isaiah was 5 years old. He'd been diagnosed with autism a year earlier, but Shanice had never really told me what that meant. All I knew was that he didn't talk much, didn't like to be touched, and seemed to live in a world I couldn't quite reach. That first night, I didn't sleep at all. Isaiah wouldn't sleep in the bed I'd made up in the spare room. He wanted to line up all his toy cars in a specific pattern on the floor, and when I tried to move one, he had a meltdown that lasted 40 minutes. I'd never heard a child scream like that. It wasn't anger, it was pure distress, like his whole world was ending. I called my sister Beverly at midnight. "Bev, I don't know what to do. This baby won't stop crying and I can't figure out what he needs." "Loretta, maybe you should call social services," she said. "You're 71 years old. You don't need this kind of stress." But when I looked at Isaiah, curled up in the corner of the living room, still humming through his tears, I couldn't do it. This was my grandson, my blood, and he'd already been abandoned once. I wasn't going to let it happen again. The next few months were the hardest of my life. Isaiah didn't respond to anything I tried. He wouldn't eat most foods, only chicken nuggets and applesauce. He couldn't stand certain sounds, like the vacuum cleaner or the telephone. He'd cover his ears and rock back and forth until the noise stopped. My friends from church would visit and whisper, "Bless your heart," in that way that meant, "I'm glad it's you and not me." Some stopped coming around altogether, said it was too hard to watch. But my pastor, Reverend Mitchell, he was different. He came by one Saturday with a bag of books about autism and childhood development. "Sister Loretta," he said, "this child is a blessing, not a burden. You just gotta learn his language." That's what changed everything. His language. I started paying attention to what Isaiah paid attention to. He loved patterns, any kind of pattern. The way the light came through the window blinds, the spacing of tiles on the kitchen floor, the sequence of numbers on license plates. One day, I was balancing my checkbook at the kitchen table, and Isaiah came and stood beside me. This was unusual because he usually avoided being close to people. He watched me write numbers for a long time, then he pointed at a mistake I'd made in my addition. 28, he said. It was one of the few words I'd heard him speak clearly. I looked down. He was right. I'd written 26, but the sum was actually 28. "You can do math, baby?" I asked. He didn't answer, just went back to lining up his cars. But something clicked in my mind. This child wasn't too difficult. He was brilliant. His brain just worked different from mine. I started teaching him the way I taught my most gifted students. I used his interests. If he liked patterns, I'd make patterns out of everything. Patterns with numbers, patterns with colors, patterns with words. By the time he was 7, he was doing multiplication in his head that I needed a calculator for. The school district wanted to put him in special education, but I fought them. My grandson needs enrichment, not isolation, I told them at every meeting. They finally agreed to let him try regular classes with support, and he excelled. Top of his class by 3rd grade. But it wasn't easy. Isaiah still had hard days. Days when the world was too loud, too bright, too much. Days when he couldn't go to school because he was overwhelmed. On those days, I'd sit with him in the quiet, letting him hum his 3-note pattern, waiting for him to come back to himself. People in the neighborhood started to know us. Mrs. Hayes and her grandson, the special one. Some folks were kind, others whispered. I heard "that strange child" more times than I can count. But I held my head high. I knew what I had. I had a gift from God, even if nobody else could see it. The years passed like that. Me and Isaiah, figuring out life together. He got bigger, taller than me by age 13. His voice changed. But he still squeezed my hand 3 times when he needed to tell me he loved me. Still hummed those same 3 notes when he was thinking hard. When Isaiah turned 14, he started spending every free moment on the computer I'd bought him for his birthday. I'd saved for a year to afford it, but seeing his face light up when he opened that box made every penny worth it. "What are you working on, baby?" I'd ask. "A program, Grandma. It verifies things, makes sure they're real." I didn't understand most of what he explained, but I loved watching him work. His fingers flying over the keyboard, his mind solving puzzles I couldn't even see. By 15, Isaiah had built something companies wanted to buy. Verification software, he called it. Something about using patterns to detect fake documents and fraud. Tech companies started calling our house. My landline, the same number I'd had for 40 years, was suddenly ringing with offers from California and New York. I was scared. Scared someone would take advantage of him. Scared I'd make the wrong decision. But Isaiah was calm, like always. "Grandma," he said one night at dinner, "I want to sell it. We could use the money. You could stop worrying about bills." It was true. My pension and Social Security barely covered our expenses. The house needed a new roof. My car was 20 years old. I'd been putting off going to the dentist because I couldn't afford the copay. "Baby, I don't want you to feel pressured. This is your creation." "I know," he said, looking directly at me, which he rarely did. "But you're my creation too. You made me who I am. I want to take care of you now. I cried that night. Cried for the scared little boy who'd shown up at my door with 2 garbage bags. Cried for the grandmother I'd become. Cried for the blessing this child had been in my life. We hired a lawyer recommended by Reverend Mitchell, a good man named Thomas Wright who specialized in protecting young inventors. He helped Isaiah navigate the sale. When it was done, Isaiah had $3.2 million in a trust fund. $3.2 million. I couldn't even imagine that much money. Don't tell anyone, Thomas warned us. Money changes people, brings out the worst in folks, even family. But in a community like ours, news travels fast. Within 2 weeks, everybody knew. The congratulations started. Then the requests. Distant cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Church members with investment opportunities. Friends who suddenly needed help with their bills. I said no to everyone. This was Isaiah's future, not a community fund. Then, 3 months after the sale, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Mama? The voice was older, rougher, but I knew it instantly. Shanice? Yeah, it's me. I heard about Isaiah, about his success. I'm so proud of him. My hand gripped the phone so tight my knuckles went white. You're proud? Of course. He's my son. I always knew he was special. You abandoned him. Left him on my doorstep like a bag of trash. That's not fair, Mama. I was struggling. I was young. I made mistakes. But I'm better now. I want to be in his life again. I want to make things right. Something in her voice made my stomach drop. This wasn't a mother calling to apologize. This was someone who smelled money. Shanice, if you want to see Isaiah, we can talk about... Actually, Mama, my lawyer will be in touch. I've been reading about guardianship laws. Since I never legally gave up my parental rights, Isaiah is still technically under my custody. And as his mother, I should be managing his finances until he's 18. The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen, phone in hand, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath me. For 11 years, I'd protected this child, fed him, clothed him, learned his language, celebrated his gifts, and now his mother, who'd thrown him away like yesterday's garbage, was coming back for his money. Isaiah found me still standing there 20 minutes later. He touched my shoulder, gentle like he'd learned to do over the years. Grandma, what's wrong? I turned to him, this beautiful boy who'd become a young man, and I couldn't find the words. How do you tell a child that his mother wants him now, but only because he's worth something? Your mama called, I finally said. His face didn't change. No surprise, no excitement, no pain. Just that calm that always scared me a little because I couldn't read it. I know she would, he said. You know? People follow patterns, Grandma. I've been tracking her digital footprint since I sold the software. She's been researching guardianship law, financial management, parental rights. She filed a motion in family court yesterday. My knees went weak. Yesterday? We'll be served papers tomorrow morning. 9:30 a.m. A man in a blue sedan will knock on our door. He was right, of course. At exactly 9:30 the next morning, a process server handed me papers that felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. Shanice was suing for custody and financial guardianship. She had a lawyer. Documents. A whole case built on lies that claimed she'd been in Isaiah's life all along, that I'd been the one keeping them apart, that she was the responsible parent who deserved to manage her son's fortune. I called Thomas Wright immediately. They're coming for him. They're coming for his money. How fast can you get to my office? We were there in an hour. Thomas read through the papers, his face getting darker with each page. Mrs. Hayes, I'm not going to lie to you. This is bad. Shanice has forged documents here, fabricated records, fake emails and text messages that supposedly show regular communication between her and Isaiah, photos that appear to show visitation. She's built an entire false narrative. But it's all lies. I know, but proving it will be hard. It's your word against manufactured evidence. And unfortunately, the courts tend to favor biological parents, especially if they can show they've been trying to maintain a relationship. I felt like I was drowning. What do we do? Thomas looked at Isaiah, who'd been quiet through the whole meeting. Son, do you have anything that could help us? Any proof of what really happened? Isaiah pulled out his laptop. I have everything. And that's when he showed us what he'd really been building for the last 2 years. Not just verification software, a complete, unalterable digital archive of his entire life since he'd learned to use a computer. Photos, videos, timestamps, location data, voice recordings, school records, medical appointments, everything, all verified by his own software, impossible to fake or alter. He'd been documenting everything, preparing for this exact moment. My brilliant, careful, pattern-loving grandson had seen this coming and built his defense years in advance. She left me on March 17, 2014, at 9:07 p.m., Isaiah said, pulling up a video file. I recorded it. On the screen, I saw that night. My own shocked face when I opened the door. Shanice's cold voice saying, "He's yours now." Isaiah's small body standing in the doorway, holding a tablet I didn't know he had, recording everything. Thomas Wright's face split into a smile. Isaiah, you might be the smartest client I've ever had. But as we left his office that day, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread, because I knew Shanice. I'd raised her, and when she wanted something, she didn't give up easy. 2 weeks later, we were back in Thomas's office for an emergency meeting. They've escalated, Thomas said, his voice grim. Shanice isn't just suing for custody anymore. She's filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services, claiming you're financially exploiting Isaiah. She's telling them you coerced him into giving you access to his money, that you're taking advantage of his disability. That's insane. I haven't touched a penny of his money. I know, but they have to investigate. And Mrs. Hayes... He paused, looking uncomfortable. They're also claiming you're mentally unfit to care for him due to your age. They've requested a competency evaluation. The room started spinning. This couldn't be happening. After everything we'd been through, everything we'd built together, they were trying to paint me as the villain. Isaiah's hand found mine under the table. 3 squeezes. But for the first time in 11 years, I wasn't sure that would be enough. The investigation started the next week. A social worker came to our house, asking questions, looking through our things, watching how Isaiah and I interacted. She was kind, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. An elderly woman raising a disabled teenager who'd just come into millions. It looked suspicious from the outside. Then came the competency evaluation, memory tests, cognitive assessments, questions about my finances, my health, my ability to care for Isaiah. I felt like I was being put on trial before the trial even started. Meanwhile, Shanice's lawyer kept filing motions, requests for temporary custody, requests for emergency financial oversight, requests to freeze Isaiah's accounts. Each new paper that arrived felt like another knife in my back. The court date was set for July 15th, 2 months away. 2 months of living in fear that they'd take my grandson from me before we ever got our day in court. Isaiah stayed calm through all of it. Too calm. He spent his days coding, building something new he wouldn't tell me about. Insurance, he called it. Just in case. Baby, what does that mean? It means I'm ready, Grandma. Whatever happens, I'm ready. But I wasn't ready. How could I be ready to fight my own daughter in court? How could I be ready to prove I was a good guardian when every official document said I was just an old woman who'd taken in her grandson? I didn't have forged papers or fancy lawyers or manufactured evidence. All I had was the truth, and I was terrified that wouldn't be enough. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my kitchen at 3 a.m, drinking coffee and praying for wisdom, for strength, for justice. Isaiah came downstairs and sat across from me. We didn't say anything for a long time. We didn't need to. 11 years together had taught us how to communicate in silence. Finally, he spoke. "Grandma, do you trust me?" "With my life, baby." "Then trust me tomorrow. No matter what happens, no matter what you see or hear, trust me. I got you." 3 squeezes of my hand across the table. And then we were in that courtroom, facing Shanice and her lawyer with their stack of lies, and the judge was asking if I had representation, and I was opening my mouth with no words coming out, because how do you fight someone who's willing to destroy you for money? That's when the door at the back of the courtroom opened. And everything changed. Thomas Wright walked through that courtroom door like an angel sent from heaven. But he wasn't alone. Behind him came 3 more people. A woman in a sharp suit carrying a briefcase, a younger man with a laptop bag, and Reverend Mitchell, dressed in his Sunday best, walking with the kind of authority that only comes from 40 years of leading a congregation. "Your Honor," Thomas said, his voice filling the room, "I apologize for the delay. I am Thomas Wright, representing Mrs. Loretta Hayes and Isaiah Hayes. We're ready to proceed." I wanted to cry. I'd thought we couldn't afford to keep him after all the preliminary hearings and motions. The bills had been piling up, and I'd told him we might have to represent ourselves, but here he was, and he'd brought reinforcements. The judge nodded. "Very well. Ms. Porter, you may present your opening statement." Shanice's lawyer, a woman named Jennifer Porter, stood up with confidence radiating off her like heat. "Your Honor, this is a simple case of a mother seeking to reunite with her son and protect his interests. My client, Shanice Hayes, has maintained a relationship with her son Isaiah throughout his childhood, despite interference from the grandmother. When Isaiah recently came into significant wealth, Mrs. Loretta Hayes took advantage of her position to control access to these funds. We have documentation proving regular contact between mother and son, as well as evidence that Mrs. Hayes has been financially exploiting Isaiah due to his disability." Every word was a lie. Every single word. I felt my chest getting tight, like I couldn't breathe. Isaiah's hand found mine. 3 squeezes. Thomas stood up when it was our turn. "Your Honor, what Ms. Porter just described is fiction. Not a single word of it is true, and we can prove it. This case is about a woman who abandoned her 5-year-old autistic son on his grandmother's doorstep 11 years ago and never looked back. Not a phone call, not a birthday card, not a penny of support. But now that Isaiah has achieved extraordinary success through his own brilliance and his grandmother's dedication, his biological mother wants to claim both credit and control. We will show that every document Ms. Porter plans to present is a forgery, and we will prove it using technology that is, ironically, the very technology Isaiah himself created." The judge leaned forward. "That's quite a claim, Mr. Wright." "Yes, Your Honor, and we have quite a bit of proof." The first part of the trial was brutal. Shanice took the stand, and I had to sit there and watch my own daughter lie. She talked about how much she loved Isaiah, how she'd struggled with the decision to leave him with me temporarily, how she'd stayed in touch through phone calls and video chats. "I sent money every month," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I know it wasn't much, but I was working 3 jobs trying to build a better life so I could bring my baby home." The lies came so easy to her, like she'd practiced them in a mirror. "And did Mrs. Hayes make it difficult for you to see Isaiah?" Ms. Porter asked. "Yes. She told me I was a bad mother, that I didn't deserve him. She screened my calls, blocked me on social media. I had to fight for every minute I got with my son." I whispered to Thomas, "That never happened. None of that happened." "I know," he whispered back. "Let her talk. Let her build her house of cards. We'll blow it down." Then Ms. Porter presented the evidence. Email printouts showing regular communication between Shanice and Isaiah, text message records, photos of them together at various ages, even a few video clips that appeared to show Shanice visiting Isaiah. The judge studied each piece carefully. "These seem quite comprehensive, Ms. Porter." "They are, Your Honor. My client has maintained detailed records of her relationship with her son, perhaps sensing that one day she might need to prove her devotion. It was my turn to testify next. Thomas walked me through the real story. That night, Shanice abandoned Isaiah. The 11 years of silence, the struggles and triumphs, the way I'd learned to communicate with my grandson, to celebrate his differences, to nurture his gifts. "Mrs. Hayes," Thomas asked, "in 11 years, how many times did Shanice contact you about Isaiah?" "Twice. Once about 3 years ago asking for money. She said she was having trouble with rent. I sent her $200. That was the last I heard from her until 3 months ago when she called about Isaiah's software sale." "And did she ever send money for Isaiah's care?" "Not one penny. I paid for everything. His food, his clothes, his computer, his therapy sessions. Everything came from my pension and Social Security. When Ms. Porter cross-examined me, she was vicious. "Mrs. Hayes, you're 72 years old, correct?" "Yes." "And you live on a fixed income?" "Yes." "Isn't it true that you were struggling financially before Isaiah's windfall?" "I managed just fine." "Did you or did you not tell your sister Beverly that you didn't know how you'd afford a new roof for your house?" My heart sank. How did she know about that conversation? "I may have mentioned it, but... And now your grandson has $3.2 million, and suddenly you have representation from one of the most expensive law firms in the state. How are you paying for that, Mrs. Hayes?" Thomas stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. Mrs. Hayes's financial arrangements are not on trial here." "Sustained. Ms. Porter, move on." But the damage was done. I could see the judge's expression. She was wondering if I was using Isaiah's money, if I was the one taking advantage. During the lunch recess, I fell apart. We were in a small conference room, and I couldn't hold it together anymore. "They're going to believe her. They're going to think I'm some old woman trying to steal from her grandson." "No, they're not," Isaiah said. His voice was firm, stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Because this afternoon, we tell the truth." The woman who'd come in with Thomas introduced herself. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm Dr. Patricia Freeman. I'm a forensic digital analyst. Isaiah sent me his verification software and the documents Ms. Porter submitted. I've spent the last 2 weeks analyzing them." "And?" She smiled. "Every single one is a forgery, and I can prove it." When court resumed, Thomas called Dr. Freeman to the stand. She explained her credentials, her experience, her expertise in detecting digital fraud. "Dr. Freeman, have you examined the documents submitted by the plaintiff?" "I have." "And what did you find?" "Every email, text message, photo, and video has been digitally manipulated or fabricated. The metadata doesn't match the purported dates. The images contain inconsistencies. The videos show signs of deepfake technology. None of these communications actually occurred." Ms. Porter jumped up. "Objection! This is highly technical testimony without proper foundation." The judge looked at Dr. Freeman. "Can you explain this in simpler terms?" "Of course, Your Honor. Think of it this way. Every digital file has a fingerprint, a unique signature that tells us when it was really created, where it came from, and whether it's been altered. These documents claim to be from years ago, but their fingerprints show they were all created within the last 4 months. Some were made on the same computer on the same days. It's like someone claiming to have letters from the 1950s, but the paper was manufactured last week." I watched Shanice's face go pale. "Furthermore," Dr. Freeman continued, "the photos purporting to show Ms. Hayes with Isaiah at various ages are composites. Someone took old photos of Ms. Hayes and digitally inserted Isaiah, or vice versa. The lighting doesn't match. The shadows fall in different directions. The resolution is inconsistent. These images are forgeries." "And how can you be certain?" the judge asked. "Because I verified them using software designed specifically to detect this kind of fraud. Software created by Isaiah Hayes himself." The judge looked at Isaiah. "Young man, Did you create the software being used to analyze these documents? Isaiah stood up. Yes, Your Honor. And why did you create such software? Because I knew this would happen. I know patterns, Your Honor. I've studied human behavior patterns since I was little. My mother abandoned me when I was 5. She followed a pattern of avoidance and neglect. But I also knew that money changes patterns. When I sold my software, I knew the pattern would shift. She would come back. So I prepared. How did you prepare? I built a timeline, an unalterable digital record of my life with my grandmother. Every important moment, every achievement, every day my mother was absent. I used my own verification system to create something that cannot be faked or disputed. Thomas pulled out a tablet and handed it to the bailiff, who gave it to the judge. Your Honor, what you're seeing is Isaiah's timeline. It's comprehensive, verified, and completely transparent. You can see every piece of evidence, trace its origin, and confirm its authenticity. The judge spent 20 minutes scrolling through Isaiah's timeline. I watched her face change from skeptical to surprised to angry. She was seeing the truth. All of it. Finally, she looked up. Ms. Porter, I'm going to give you an opportunity to explain this. But I warn you, I'm very troubled by what I'm seeing. Ms. Porter stood up, and for the first time she looked uncertain. Your Honor, we will need time to review this new evidence and respond appropriately. I imagine you will. Court is adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow. Ms. Porter, I strongly suggest you use this time to have a very honest conversation with your client. We left the courthouse that afternoon in a daze. Reverend Mitchell walked with us to the parking lot. Sister Loretta, I knew God would make a way, he said. How did you afford to keep Thomas? I asked. I couldn't pay him anymore. Reverend Mitchell smiled. The church took up a special collection. When we heard what was happening, the whole congregation came together. We raised $23,000 in 3 weeks. Nobody was going to let you fight this battle alone. I started crying right there in the parking lot. My church family, my community. They'd seen me at my lowest and lifted me up. But Thomas looked worried. Don't celebrate yet. We won today, but this isn't over. People like Shanice and her lawyer don't give up when they're exposed. They get desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. He was right to worry. That night, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. Mama, we need to talk. Shanice's voice was different now, harder, meaner. I have nothing to say to you. You're going to regret embarrassing me like that in court. You think you're so smart turning my own son against me. But I'm his mother. I have rights. You gave up your rights when you left him on my doorstep like trash. He was difficult. You don't know what it was like trying to handle him by myself. You didn't try. You ran away. And you swooped in and played hero. Well, guess what, Mama? Heroes don't always win. I will get what's mine. If not through the court, then another way. The line went dead. I stood there shaking, holding the phone. Another way? What did that mean? I found Isaiah in his room, still working on his laptop. Your mama called. She's threatening something. Isaiah didn't look up from his screen. I know, she's been texting me all evening. What? Why didn't you tell me? He turned the laptop so I could see. Text messages from Shanice, each one more manipulative than the last. Saying she loved him. Saying I was turning him against her. Saying she deserved a chance. Saying she'd make him rich beyond his wildest dreams if he'd just support her claim. Then the messages got darker. Saying that autistic people couldn't make good decisions. Saying he needed his mother to protect him. Saying I was too old and would die soon. And then what would he do? She's trying to manipulate you. I know. That's why I'm recording everything. She doesn't realize that every text, every call, every attempt to contact me just adds to the evidence against her. My grandson. My brilliant, careful, pattern-loving grandson. He was 3 steps ahead of everyone. The next morning, we arrived at court to find Ms. Porter looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Shanice wasn't sitting confident anymore. She was hunched over, whispering frantically with her lawyer. The judge came in, and her expression was stern. "Ms. Porter, have you had that conversation with your client?" "Yes, Your Honor. My client wishes to—" "Before you continue," the judge interrupted, "I need to inform you that I spent last evening reviewing Isaiah's timeline in detail. I also consulted with 2 independent forensic analysts who confirmed Dr. Freeman's findings. The documents you submitted are forgeries. Do you understand the seriousness of submitting false evidence to this court?" Ms. Porter's face went white. "Your Honor, I was not aware that the documents were fraudulent. My client provided them, and I accepted them in good faith." "Then you failed in your due diligence. Regardless, we have a larger issue. Ms. Hayes," she looked at Shanice, "do you have anything to say for yourself?" Shanice stood up, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was trying to figure out how to spin this, how to make herself the victim. "Your Honor, I made mistakes. I was young and scared when Isaiah was born. Yes, I left him with my mother. Yes, I didn't stay in regular contact. But I've changed. I'm different now. I want to be a mother to my son. Doesn't that count for something? Don't I deserve a second chance?" The judge stared at her for a long moment. "Ms. Hayes, this court believes in second chances. But this case isn't about whether you deserve redemption. It's about what's best for Isaiah. And fabricating evidence to claim guardianship of a child's fortune is not the action of a reformed person. It's the action of someone who sees her son as a bank account. That's not true. Then explain the forged documents. Explain the fake emails and manufactured photos. Explain why you're only here now, after 11 years of complete absence." Shanice couldn't answer. She just stood there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish. Then Isaiah stood up. "Your Honor, may I speak?" "Please." Isaiah walked to the front of the courtroom. He didn't look at his mother. He looked straight at the judge. "My mother is right about one thing. She deserves a second chance. But not with me. I don't need her. I don't want her in my life. She made a choice 11 years ago, and I've moved on. My grandmother is the only parent I've ever known. She learned my language when everyone else said I was too difficult. She fought for me when everyone else wanted to give up. She celebrated my differences instead of treating them like a disease. She is my mother in every way that matters." His voice was steady, clear, powerful. This wasn't the quiet little boy who'd stood in my doorway all those years ago. This was a young man who knew exactly who he was. I built that verification software to expose fraud and protect truth. It's ironic that the first person it exposed was my own mother. But that's what truth does. It reveals things we'd rather keep hidden. He turned to Shanice for the first time. "You want a second chance? Go build a life that deserves one. Get therapy. Become someone who helps people instead of using them. But leave me out of it. I'm not your redemption story. I'm not your lottery ticket. I'm just a kid who got lucky enough to be raised by someone who actually loved me." The courtroom was dead silent. Then Isaiah turned back to the judge. "I have one more thing to present, Your Honor. Evidence I didn't show yesterday because I wanted to give my mother a chance to tell the truth. But since she's still lying, you need to see this." He pulled out his phone and handed it to the bailiff. "These are text messages my mother sent me last night, after court. Messages where she tried to manipulate me into supporting her case. Messages where she disparaged my grandmother and made threats." The judge read the messages, and her expression darkened with each one. When she finished, she looked at Shanice with pure disgust. "Ms. Hayes, you contacted your son while this case is pending. You attempted to manipulate him? You made threats against Mrs. Hayes?" Ms. Porter stood up. "Your Honor, my client—" "Sit down, Ms. Porter. I've heard enough." The judge took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. This is one of the most disturbing cases I've encountered. A mother who abandons her child, disappears for over a decade, then returns with fabricated evidence to claim his fortune. And when caught, she doubles down by attempting to manipulate the child directly. She put her glasses back on. I'm going to take a 30-minute recess. When I return, I'll issue my ruling. But I'll tell you now, it's not looking good for you, Ms. Hayes. We went back to the conference room. Thomas was practically glowing. We've got this. We've won. But I couldn't celebrate. Because I knew my daughter, and I knew that look in her eye when the judge read those text messages. That wasn't defeat. That was rage. Thomas, what can she do now? If she loses, is it over? She can appeal. But with this evidence, she won't win. The best thing she could do is walk away. But what if she doesn't? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew that people who were willing to forge documents and lie in court were capable of anything. When we returned to the courtroom, the judge had a stack of papers in front of her. I've made my decision, she said. The petition for custody and financial guardianship is denied. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order against Shanice Hayes. She is not to contact Isaiah Hayes or Loretta Hayes in any way. No phone calls, no texts, no emails, no in-person contact. If she violates this order, she will be arrested. Relief washed over me like a wave, but the judge wasn't done. Additionally, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation into possible perjury and fraud charges. Ms. Porter, your firm will also be reported to the Bar Association for failing to verify the authenticity of evidence before presenting it to this court. Ms. Porter looked like she might be sick. Mrs. Hayes, the judge looked at me. You have full legal guardianship of Isaiah until he reaches 18. No one can challenge that without extraordinary cause. And Isaiah, young man, you have built something remarkable. Not just your software, but your life. I hope you continue to use your gifts to expose truth and protect people. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. It was over. We'd won. Isaiah hugged me right there in the courtroom, something he rarely did. We stood there holding each other, crying, while Reverend Mitchell prayed over us and Thomas gathered up his papers. When we finally pulled apart, I looked across the courtroom. Shanice was standing there, staring at us. The look on her face made my blood run cold. She mouthed 2 words. This isn't over. Then she turned and walked out. Thomas saw it too. Loretta, I'm going to have a police officer escort you home, just as a precaution. You think she'd actually do something? I think she just lost $3.2 million and got threatened with criminal charges. That makes people unpredictable. The officer followed us home. He checked our house, made sure everything was secure, and gave me his card. Any sign of trouble? You call immediately. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Shanice's face. That rage, that promise of something more. Isaiah was calm, like always. She won't hurt us, Grandma. She's too smart for that. But she might try something else. Something we haven't predicted. Like what? I don't know yet. But I'm watching. I'm always watching. At 2 a.m, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Hayes? A woman's voice I didn't recognize. Who is this? My name is Brenda Chen. I'm a reporter with Channel 7 News. I'm calling about your daughter's allegations. What allegations? The interview she just gave us. About how you stole her son and his money. About how you manipulated an autistic child for financial gain. About how the system is rigged against young black mothers. It's running on the 6 a.m. news. I wanted to give you a chance to respond. My heart stopped. Shanice hadn't given up. She'd just changed tactics. And the whole city was about to hear her lies. I hung up the phone and immediately called Thomas. It was 2 a.m, but this couldn't wait. She went to the media, I said, my voice shaking. She's telling them I stole Isaiah and his money. It's running on the morning news. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Get some sleep if you can. I'll handle this. And Loretta, don't watch the news tomorrow morning. Trust me on that. But how could I sleep? How could I close my eyes knowing that in a few hours, the whole city would think I was some evil old woman who'd manipulated my disabled grandson for his money? Isaiah came downstairs and found me sitting in the dark. "I already know," he said. "I've been monitoring her social media. She posted about the interview an hour ago. It's getting shared everywhere." "Baby Mom, what are we going to do? People are going to believe her." "No, they won't. Because I've already sent something to every major news outlet in the state. It's going live at 5 a.m., 1 hour before her interview." "What did you send?" He showed me his laptop. A video. Professionally edited, with timestamps and verified documentation. It showed everything. That night 11 years ago when Shanice abandoned him, the court documents from yesterday, the forged evidence, the judge's ruling, Dr. Freeman's testimony, and most powerful of all, it showed our life together. Every small moment, every achievement, every proof that I'd been there when his mother wasn't. "Isaiah, this is the truth. That's all it is. The truth, verified and documented. I sent it to Channel 7's competitor first. They'll run it as breaking news. And by the time her interview airs, everyone will already know she's lying. My grandson. My brilliant, 3 steps ahead grandson." At 5 a.m., my phone started ringing. My sister Beverly, my neighbor Judith, friends from church, everyone calling to tell me they'd seen the news, that they knew the truth, that they were on my side. By 6 a.m., when Shanice's interview was supposed to air, Channel 7 pulled it. Instead, they ran a story about how they'd almost been manipulated by a woman trying to defraud her own son. The reporter who'd called me, Brenda Chen, apologized on air. "We were almost complicit in spreading false information," she said. "This is a reminder that we must verify our sources, especially when someone's reputation is at stake." But the real story was what happened next. The video Isaiah released went viral. By noon, it had been viewed over 2 million times. News outlets across the country picked it up. "Teen genius uses his own software to expose mother's fraud," the headlines read. "Grandmother's love defeats greed in heartwarming story." My phone didn't stop ringing, but now it wasn't just friends. It was strangers, people sharing their own stories of raising grandchildren. Other grandparents who'd been abandoned by their own kids. Autism advocates praising how I'd supported Isaiah. Tech companies asking if they could interview him. The story touched something in people. It wasn't just about money or fraud. It was about love, real love, the kind that shows up every day, even when it's hard. But the best call came 3 days after the trial ended. "Mrs. Hayes, this is Detective Marcus Franklin with the District Attorney's Office. I wanted to update you on the case against your daughter." My stomach tightened. "Yes?" "We've charged her with perjury, fraud, and attempted theft. Her lawyer, Jennifer Porter, is cooperating with the investigation in exchange for a lesser charge. She's provided evidence that Shanice approached her specifically because she was willing to, quote, be creative with the evidence. Ms. Porter is being disbarred, but she'll avoid jail time. Your daughter, however, is looking at 5 to 7 years. 7 years? She committed fraud against a minor with disabilities. The courts take that very seriously. She'll likely take a plea deal, but either way, she'll serve time." I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. But all I felt was sad. Sad for the daughter I'd raised, who'd become someone I didn't recognize. Sad for the choices she'd made. Sad that it had come to this. "Mrs. Hayes, are you there?" "Yes. Thank you for calling." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Not tears of joy, tears of grief. Because no matter what Shanice had done, she was still my baby, and knowing she'd go to prison hurt in a way I couldn't explain. Isaiah found me there an hour later. "You're sad about her," he said. It wasn't a question. She's my daughter. I raised her. I changed her diapers and taught her to read and bandaged her scraped knees. Somewhere along the way, I must have failed her. Must have missed something. Isaiah sat down across from me. Grandma, you didn't fail. People make their own choices. You taught me that. Every decision has a consequence. She chose greed. She chose lies. You chose love. You chose me. Those were all individual choices. When did you get so wise? I learned from you. Patterns, remember? I studied your pattern. Consistency, kindness, sacrifice. That's the pattern that saved me. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Shanice. She was out on bail waiting for her trial. Mama, it started, I know you probably hate me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to understand why I did what I did. When Isaiah was little, I was overwhelmed. I was 23 years old, working 2 jobs, and I had this child who didn't respond to anything I did. He wouldn't hug me, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk. I felt like I was failing every single day. So I ran. I told myself you'd be better for him anyway, that he needed stability I couldn't give him. But really, I was just scared and selfish. Then I heard he'd made all that money, and something in me snapped. I thought, I carried him for 9 months. I gave birth to him. Don't I deserve something? I convinced myself that the money was mine by right, that you'd stolen my son and stolen my chance at a better life. But watching that trial, seeing all the evidence of how you raised him, seeing how he looks at you with so much love, I realized I didn't lose a son. I threw him away. And you picked him up and made him into someone extraordinary. I'm going to prison, Mama. My lawyer says 3 to 5 years if I take the plea deal. Maybe that's what I need. Time to figure out who I am and why I make such terrible choices. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that despite everything, you were a good mother to me. I'm the one who failed, not you. Love, Shanice. I read that letter 10 times. Then I folded it up and put it in my Bible. Maybe one day I'd be ready to forgive her. Maybe not. But I could at least understand her pain, even if I couldn't excuse her choices. Life slowly returned to normal after that. Isaiah turned 17. He started getting recruitment letters from every major university in the country. MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon. They all wanted him. What do you want to do, baby? I asked him one night at dinner. I want to help people like me. Kids who think differently, who see patterns nobody else sees. I want to create programs that make the world more accessible for people with autism. That sounds perfect. But I'm not leaving you, Grandma. Whatever school I pick, you're coming with me. I'll get us a place near campus. You can finally get that garden you always wanted. And maybe we can travel, see the country, do all the things you put off to raise me. Isaiah, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You gave up your retirement to raise me. Now I get to give you the retirement you deserve. 3 squeezes of my hand across the table. That summer, something unexpected happened. The video Isaiah had released caught the attention of a tech company in Silicon Valley. They wanted to license his verification software for a new initiative, protecting vulnerable adults and children from financial exploitation. Mr. Hayes, the CEO said on a video call, your software could prevent thousands of cases like your own. Elderly people being scammed by family members, disabled individuals being taken advantage of. We want to make this available to social services agencies, courts, and advocacy groups for free. Isaiah looked at me. What do you think, Grandma? I think you should do whatever you think is right. He signed the deal. Not for more money, he donated the licensing fee to autism research, but because it meant his painful experience could protect other people. News of the deal spread through our community. Reverend Mitchell asked Isaiah to speak at church one Sunday. I was nervous for him. Public speaking wasn't his strong suit. But he stood up there in front of the whole congregation and spoke from his heart. "When I was 5 years old," he said, "my mother decided I was too difficult to love. But my grandmother decided I was worth the effort. She didn't know anything about autism. She didn't have any special training. She just had love and determination. She learned my language. She celebrated my differences. She fought for me when everyone else wanted to give up. The Bible says, 'Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.' That's what my grandmother did. She bore the burden of raising me alone. She believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. She hoped for my future when everyone else saw only my limitations. She endured every difficult moment because she loved me. I built verification software to expose lies. But the real truth I want to share is this. Love is the only thing that can't be faked. It can't be forged or manufactured. It shows up in the small moments, in the patience, in the sacrifice, in the consistency of being there, day after day, year after year. My grandmother showed me what real love looks like, and now I get to spend the rest of my life trying to love people the way she loved me. There wasn't a dry eye in that church. People stood up and applauded. Some shouted, "Amen." Others just cried. Reverend Mitchell had to wait 5 minutes before he could continue the service. After church, people kept coming up to me, sharing their stories, thanking me, saying I was an inspiration. But I didn't feel inspiring. I just felt grateful. Grateful that God had given me 11 extra years with my grandson. Grateful for a community that had supported us. Grateful for a second chance to be a mother when my first chance had walked away. In September, Isaiah started at MIT. He chose it because they had a cutting-edge autism research program, and because Boston had a good network of support services for me as I got older. We got a small house in Cambridge near campus. Isaiah insisted on a big backyard so I could finally have that garden. "You always talked about growing tomatoes and collard greens," he said. "Now you can." The first night in our new house, we sat on the back porch drinking sweet tea. It was different from our old neighborhood, quieter, but it felt like home because we were together. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" Isaiah said. "Anything, baby." "Do you ever regret it? Taking me in? Your life would have been so much easier without me." I set down my tea and looked at him. This brilliant young man who'd saved my life as much as I'd saved his. "Isaiah, you listened to me. You were never a burden. You were a blessing. Every difficult moment, every sleepless night, every struggle. It was all worth it because I got to watch you become who you are. You taught me patience. You taught me to see the world differently. You taught me that love isn't about making life easy. It's about showing up, especially when things are hard." "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, baby. More than you'll ever know." We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out. Somewhere in the distance I could hear the city, but here, in our little yard, it was peaceful. My phone buzzed. A text from Reverend Mitchell. "Thinking about you and Isaiah. Proud of you both. Remember, God works all things together for good for those who love Him." I smiled and put the phone away. God had indeed worked things together for good. He'd taken a scared little boy and a scared old woman and made something beautiful out of our broken pieces. 3 months later, I got another letter. This one was from a women's correctional facility. Shanice had taken the plea deal, 5 years. "Mama," she wrote, "I'm learning a lot about myself in here. I'm in therapy 3 times a week. It's hard, facing all the things I've done. But for the first time in my life, I'm being honest. About my mistakes. About my selfishness. About the son I threw away. I know I'll never get Isaiah back. I know I don't deserve him. But maybe someday, when I get out, I can be the kind of person who deserves a place in his life. Not as his mother. I lost that right. But maybe as someone who finally learned what love really means. Thank you for showing me what I should have been. even if I learned it too late. I wrote back, short and simple. Shanice, I'm praying for you. Praying that you find peace. Praying that you become the woman you were meant to be. You'll always be my daughter, no matter what you've done. And maybe one day, when you're ready, we can sit down and talk, really talk. Not about money or custody or lawsuits, just about life, about healing, about moving forward. Love, Mama. I didn't know if she'd respond. Didn't know if we'd ever have that conversation. But I'd learned that you can't force healing. You can only offer it and hope the other person is ready to receive it. Isaiah's first semester at MIT flew by. He was thriving, making friends, joining clubs. Still quiet and careful, but more confident, more sure of himself. And every weekend, we'd cook dinner together in our little kitchen, talking about his classes and my garden and everything and nothing. One Saturday in December, Isaiah came home from campus with news. Grandma, I want to start a nonprofit, using the money from my software sale. An organization that helps grandparents who are raising grandchildren, especially those with special needs. Legal support, financial assistance, respite care, education. Everything we wished we'd had. Baby, that's a lot of money. Are you sure? I'm sure. We have enough, more than enough. And money sitting in a bank doesn't help anyone. But money put to work can change lives. It can help other families like ours. We started the nonprofit in January. We called it Second Chances Foundation. Within 6 months, we'd helped 30 families. Within a year, over 200. Grandparents who'd stepped up when parents stepped out. Families struggling to understand autism or ADHD or other differences. People who just needed someone to say, "You're not alone. We see you. We support you." The foundation became my new purpose. I might have been 73 years old, but I wasn't done yet. I had experience to share, wisdom to offer, love to give. One afternoon, I was at the foundation's office when a woman came in. She was about 60 with tired eyes and a 5-year-old boy holding her hand. The boy was humming to himself, not making eye contact. "Can I help you?" I asked. "I'm raising my grandson," she said, her voice breaking. "His mother just dropped him off last week. She said he's too difficult, that she can't handle him. I don't know what to do. I don't understand why he won't look at me, why he won't talk. I'm so scared I'm going to fail him." I looked at that little boy, humming his pattern, and I saw Isaiah 11 years ago. I saw us at the beginning of our journey. I took the woman's hand. "You're not going to fail him, and you're not alone. Sit down. Let me tell you a story about a little boy who changed my life." And I did. I told her everything, the struggles, the triumphs, the fear, the love. The moment I realized that different didn't mean less. By the time I finished, she was crying. But they were good tears, hope tears. "So it gets better?" she asked. "It gets better. Different than you planned. But better. So much better." That night, I told Isaiah about the woman and her grandson. "That could have been us," he said. "If people had told you it was too hard, if you'd given up. But I didn't, and you didn't, and now we get to help other people do the same. Grandma, do you know what the most important thing you taught me was?" "What?" "That love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's the pattern that matters most." 3 squeezes of my hand. I'm 73 years old now. My hair is completely gray. My knees hurt when it rains. I move a little slower than I used to, but I've never felt more alive, more purposeful, more blessed. Isaiah is thriving at MIT. He's still creating software, but now it's tools to help people with disabilities navigate the world more easily. He's speaking at conferences, mentoring other young inventors, using his gifts to make the world better. And me? I finally have that garden, tomatoes and collard greens just like I always wanted. I volunteer at the foundation 3 days a week. I still attend church every Sunday, where I'm now on the board of trustees. I'm living the retirement I never thought I'd have. People ask me all the time, "Do you regret what happened with Shanice?" The honest answer is complicated. I regret that my daughter made the choices she did. I regret that she's in prison, paying for her mistakes. I regret that Isaiah had to grow up without his mother. But I don't regret taking him in. I don't regret the 11 years we struggled together. I don't regret learning his language, fighting for his future, celebrating his differences. Because those years made us who we are. They taught me about strength I didn't know I had. They showed me what unconditional love really means. Last month, I got a phone call from the prison. Shanice had completed a parenting class and an accountability program. She wanted to know if I'd visit. I asked Isaiah what he thought. "It's your choice, Grandma. She's your daughter. You have to decide if you're ready." I went. It was hard seeing her in that orange jumpsuit, but it was also necessary. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. For the first time in years. She apologized. Not the fake apology from the trial, but a real one. One that acknowledged the pain she'd caused, the years she'd stolen, the damage she'd done. "I'm not asking for a relationship with Isaiah," she said. "I know I lost that right. But Mama, can you forgive me? Can you at least give me that?" I thought about all the Sundays Reverend Mitchell had preached about forgiveness, about how it's not for the other person, it's for you. It's letting go of the anger and hurt so you can move forward in peace. "I forgive you," I said. And I meant it. She started crying. "I don't deserve it." None of us deserve grace. That's why it's called grace. When I left that prison, I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying something heavy and finally put it down. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean letting her back into our lives. It just meant I wasn't going to let her choices poison my peace anymore. Isaiah is 18 now, legally an adult. He doesn't need me the way he used to. But we still have dinner together every Sunday, still squeeze each other's hand 3 times, still find comfort in our patterns. Last week he told me he's been accepted to MIT's graduate program, full scholarship. They want him to continue his work on accessibility software. "But Grandma," he said, "I'm not going if you don't want to stay in Boston. We can go anywhere." "You've already given up so much for me." "Baby, I haven't given up anything. I've gained everything, a grandson I'm proud of, a purpose that matters, a life full of love. We're staying right here." He smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that still makes my heart sing. "3 squeezes?" he asked. 3 squeezes, I confirmed. And we sat there on our back porch, in our little house in Cambridge, watching the sun set over my garden. 2 people who'd been thrown away and found each other. 2 people who'd chosen love when the world chose greed. 2 people who'd built something beautiful out of something broken. They say blood is thicker than water. But I learned that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Family isn't always the people you're born to. Sometimes it's the people who show up, who stay, who love you at your most difficult and celebrate you at your best. Isaiah wasn't just my grandson. He was my second chance. My proof that God's plans are bigger than our mistakes. My reminder that the best things in life often come wrapped in unexpected packages. And I wasn't just his grandmother. I was the person who saw him when everyone else looked away. Who believed in him when everyone else saw only limitations. Who loved him not despite his differences, but because of them. That's the real story. Not the money, not the fraud, not the courtroom drama. The real story is about an old woman and a special boy who saved each other. And that's a pattern worth repeating. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.